Woe to he who will crush the senseless worm that crawls at evening in his pathway. The story I have to tell took place during the reign of the legislature of 1,000 drinks. I, Silkman, probably works well in Texas, doesn't it? Up in Austin, at the legislature of 1,000 drinks, right? I, Silkman, an aristocrat of cards, a high-toned sporting gentleman, saw it all transpire. I understood it now as clearly as your AC Ducey. I should have understood it then, since in my incomparable Beau Brummel waistcoat, I had the ear and the confidence of every fat man on that august legislature. But it's too late. It is 100 years too late. I can only tell the tale now, and that only if I have time, for my bowels flee from me. They dissolve from the far side and flow from the near. My intestines mistake themselves for a fuse. That much its sizzle I can feel. The far margin of my intestine turns to dust and falls into the funnel. I am my own hourglass. The black grains pour from my fundament like gunpowder from its keg. I sit in a corn crib in the shadow of Mount Diablo, an actual mountain in the Bay Area. I'm pure friction. I'm a live wire. Touch me and we all go, the devil's quaint volcano as well. They have drained the swamp in which I have kept my gaze for the last 50 years in order to develop houses. The whip-like rushes, the truncheon blooms of the tools are brown and dead in this sort of swampy area. 20 bulldozers, earth movers, dump trucks gun their engines and will not stop. I think they are bug husks. Invocation. Obliged to speak, all plots to kill, the threatening demonstration of a dog's bark, arsenic in his medicine, laudanum in his coffee, chloroform on his pillow, several blows of a hammer on his head, heavy, dull blows with the axe, more dogs developing. Silkman, your professor of cards, was handsome. Observe his patent leather, high-heeled boots, that costly diamond breastpin. Observe the dainty diamonds on his fingers, sparkling withal. He was cordial, bland, and fascinating. Even his toys were serious. He carried a derringer, pint-sized death. On its ivory grip was inlaid lapis lazuli. On the one side, a bloody hand, hearts a-flushing. On the other, a twofold dilemma. His countenance gave an advertisement of intellectual power, calm, reserved power. There was no mercy. He surely crushed the senseless worm that crawled at evening in his pathway. I am Silkman. My body is this history. My body is deep with time. I keep to myself in these tools as a courtesy. I'm too profound to be looked at, for if you were to gaze at me, I might gaze back. Therefore, those bulldozers work at risky revelation. Sleepers awake! Give the bright eye of the sun but a moment to look on the ground cleared of the thoughtful tools. You know what tool, T-U-L-E-S, they're like those in the tules, you know, in the marshlands. And it will be obvious that the loblolly pattern in the hardened mud is the crisscross of bone on the top of my cranium. Dig there on top of my cranium and you will find the book of memory in which is the writing. Thus, in our beginning were the Acalanes, copper-colored people of peculiar habits. This district was infested by hordes of these creatures. The legislature of 1,000 drinks set their fine tables up on that breastwork of hills yonder and made their important judgment, quote, and that, I take this quote actually from a history, the most incredibly racist history I've ever seen of a county, Contra Costa County in California. The general expression of the wild Indian is indicative of timidity and stupidity. The men and children are absolutely and entirely naked, and the dress of the women is the least possible remove from nudity. In February and March, they live on grass. Clover and wild pea vine are among the best kind of their pasturage. We have often seen hundreds of them grazing together in a meadow like so many cattle. They are the descendants of Nebuchadnezzar. They live to die. I made up none of that. Invocation. Oh, you far-removed race, you swarming infants, you who consort with death, you more willing to submit to kindness than Negroes, your great disposition for extinction puzzles our dull brains. Your aptitude for cholera occupies the studious mind. When the Acalanes vanished before the overwhelming tide of civilization, the world was rid of so much filth. But the dozers working for these slim housing development boys raise a tide that is itself filthy. The dusky vaqueros, that race half-caste of Castilian and Indian blood, might have been a clue if I'd had any notion, any comprehension of our precarious character or the threat in our success. For this, too, is the place where the swart vaquero, your buckaroo, once rode with a jingling spur and bit and yakima and snake-like lariat. He, like the eternal sporting gentleman, wore his clothing as if it were color, purest desire, splashed on him. His trousers were laced together to the knee with bright ribbon, run through eyelets and fastened with silver bell buttons. He had a pink sash at his waist and a colorful serape over all. None of the comely Bruins of that race ever gave these hombres the pumpkin. I forget what that means. But it was a phrase I found somewhere, giving someone the pumpkin. At the end of the rodeo season, the middle of May, the matanza, the killing season, began. And so from the legislature of drinks, down would come riding that one fellow designated as the judge of the plains, whose duty it was to inspect brands, stoop to catch the confession of each singed calf, arbitrate disputes, create disputes where there were none, steal as many hooves as he could for the sake of the legislature's greasy union, and determine the number of cattle to be slaughtered. After the butchering, the hide was taken off the beast's wheezing corpse and dried. The tallow fit for market was forced into bags made from hides. The fattest portion of the meat was made into soap, while some of the best was cut, pulled into shreds, and dried in the sun. The rest was thrown to the dogs, thousands of which were kept to clean up after a matanza. It was the dogs, finally, who were the frailty and the vaquero's seamless logic of meat. The dogs gave the secret away, for even in those parts of the year distant from the matanza, blood clung to the vaquero's boot heel like memory. And so when he rode into town, tall, luminous, a string of the curs followed at his horse's heel, urgent. It was for this reason that no vaquero was allowed entrance to my gambling saloon. For the saloon was a splendid parlor, fitted up and decorated in glittering style. I grant you we were dependent on the vaquero and blood, but we were blood's pure, transcendental form. We couldn't be contaminated. We couldn't have the dogs howling in the parlor. And so even if the vaquero's gold was heaped in hillocks on the tables all around, even if his buxom woman, her brown pelt garbed in our gods, was reclining in our love seats, he at our swinging door I stopped cold. Let him gawk, a protest I could meet with a little bullet between his black eyes. After all, there was no mercy. We occupied all the cushioned seats in all the synagogues. We were irrepressible, we the white